Welcome to Mega Stadiums. Today, we're heading to Glasgow, where a football stadium stands as one of the most historically significant in the world. Ibrox, the home of Rangers Football Club, a ground built twice, scarred twice, and rebuilt into something that has become a benchmark for the sport in Britain. But more than 50 years since its last great transformation, a question is forming around Ibrox that nobody has yet been able to answer properly. What comes next? This is the story of where Ibrox came from, what it is today, and what it might yet become. Let's get started. Rangers Football Club were founded in 1872, making them one of the oldest football clubs in the world. Their early years were nomadic, Fleshers Wharf on Glasgow Green, then Kinning Park. But by 1899, the club had found the ground they would call home forever. Ibrox, a new stadium in Govan on the south side of Glasgow, built on an ambitious scale from the very beginning. Rangers were already one of the most powerful clubs in Britain. Then came the disaster that changed everything. In April 1902, Scotland were hosting England in a home Championship International. In the second half, a section of the western wooden terracing, recently constructed and not yet fully tested under real pressure, gave way beneath the weight of so many bodies. Fans fell through the gaps into the void below. In the chaos that followed, 25 people were killed and hundreds more injured. It was the worst football stadium disaster the world had yet seen. Rangers rebuilt on stone. The lesson, it seemed, had been learned. Through the following decades, the terracing could accommodate over 100,000 spectators for the biggest fixtures of the era: Scotland internationals, Old Firm matches, European ties. And in 1929, a decision was made that would define the stadium's identity forever. The club commissioned Archibald Leitch to build a new main stand on the south side of Ibrox. What Leitch delivered became one of his masterpieces: a sweeping red brick facade with richly detailed decorative ironwork, gabled roof dormers, and a press box perched along the roofline. It was named, in later years, after Bill Struth, one of the most dominant figures in British football history. The stand has since been listed as a building of special architectural interest. In a city full of fine Victorian and Edwardian engineering, the Bill Struth Main Stand is something genuinely rare. For another 4 decades, it served its purpose, but the old terracing had been aging for half a century, and the procedures for managing enormous crowds on those banks had not kept pace with the scale of what the ground was being asked to host. In January 1971, Rangers scored a late equaliser against Celtic. Fans who had already begun to make for the exits heard the roar and turned back. On Stairway 13, at the Copland Road end of the ground, the movement of people in opposite directions created a crush that the old concrete stairway could not contain. 66 people died. It remains Scotland's worst sporting disaster. The shock ran through Scottish football, through the country, through Ibrox itself, and it never fully faded. The Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975 was, in significant part, a direct response to what happened on that stairway on an otherwise ordinary January afternoon. For Rangers, and for Ibrox, the only possible answer was a complete transformation. Over the following 15 years, through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, under a series of ownership changes and with a clear commitment to making Ibrox a model for the sport, 3 sides of the ground were demolished and rebuilt from the ground up. Modern, fully enclosed cantilever stands replaced the old terracing on the Copland Road end, the Broomloan Road end, and the north side. Each was covered, fitted to current safety standards, and designed to work in concert with the Bill Struth Main Stand, which remained protected by its listed status as the spine and soul of the whole operation. In 1987, it became the first football stadium in the United Kingdom to be awarded a UEFA Five-Star rating, the highest certification then available. It was a statement. A stadium that had twice been the site of catastrophe had been rebuilt into a ground that the governing body of European football held up as exemplary. That transformation is essentially the Ibrox that exists today. A 51,700 capacity all-seater arena, 4 enclosed stands, a home that has hosted Champions League football and some of the most atmospheric Old Firm matches in the fixture's long history. The Bill Struth Main Stand looks across the pitch at 3 modern cantilever structures built 40-odd years later, and the contrast, Victorian red brick grandeur meeting functional 1980s efficiency, is one of those architectural juxtapositions that somehow completely works. Ibrox is a serious stadium. It has always been a serious stadium. The question forming around it now is what it becomes next. The most recent chapter is being written right now, in the summer of 2026. With the season over, Rangers set to work across the ground, a programme that is part straightforward modernisation and part something rarer, the careful preservation of the stadium's character. In the Copland rear stand, the old balustrades are being torn out and replaced with glass panels, opening up cleaner, clearer views of the pitch. The playing surface itself is being revamped ahead of the new campaign, and inside, the hospitality spaces are being brought fully up to date. The members' lounge refurbished from the ground up with new seating, LED lighting and fresh flooring, alongside a redecoration of the club's most symbolic rooms. But the most telling work is happening on the Bill Struth Main Stand. Repairs to the historic facade, the replacement of aging timber, and a round of compliance inspections to keep the listed structure fit for the decades ahead. This is heritage work as much as maintenance, and it runs right across the ground. The John Greig statue, which stands as the memorial to the 66, is being restored and rewaxed. Original wooden paneling is being brought back. Historic photography displays refreshed, and there are plans for dedicated lighting around the Walter Smith statue. The club expects most of it finished before the 2026-27 season kicks off. None of it is dramatic on its own, but taken together, it is a statement of intent. Modernize where it helps. Protect the character everywhere else. We've broken down every detail of this summer's programme in a dedicated video over on Mega Stadiums UK, linked in the description. Here is where the conversation gets complicated, and where the ambition and the reality begin to pull in different directions. Rangers and their supporters know what they want. A stadium that matches the club's standing. That can generate the revenues to compete in the modern European game. That carries the identity and the weight of Ibrox forward into the next century, with the same confidence with which the Bill Struth Main Stand has carried its past. The desire to expand, to push Ibrox closer to the 60,000 capacity threshold that would make it one of the most significant club stadiums in Britain is not new, and it is not vague. It has been expressed in various forms by club executives and supporters for years. The ambition is clear, the path is not. The most logical starting point, if Rangers were to begin a phased redevelopment, is the Govan Stand to the north, the stand facing the Bill Struth Main Stand across the pitch. Of the three structures built during the 1970s to 80s transformation, it is the one most overdue for meaningful attention. A rebuilt Govan Stand, expanded with a proper upper tier, upgraded hospitality facilities, and a contemporary concourse experience, would add somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 seats, and would begin to address the revenue gap that opens up between Ibrox and the biggest clubs in England whenever Rangers reach the Champions League group stage. The premium matchday experience that generates the income modern clubs depend on is, at present, compressed into a stadium infrastructure that was built for a different era. A rebuilt Govan Stand, properly designed and commercially ambitious, would change that. Beyond that, the imagination runs further. A more ambitious long-term vision would see all three of the 1980s built stands successively rebuilt over the course of a generation, each time increasing capacity, increasing commercial depth, and increasing the premium offering, while the Bill Struth Main Stand remains untouched at the heart of everything. It is not an implausible scenario. It is in many ways exactly what Rangers would eventually need to do to build the kind of Ibrox that this club's fan base, ambitions, and history deserve. A ground capable of routinely hosting 60,000 supporters, with the hospitality, event facilities, and year-round revenue streams that have transformed what clubs like Fulham, Tottenham and Everton can generate outside of match weeks. The Bill Struth Main Stand is the beginning and the end of almost every serious conversation about Ibrox's future. Its listed building status means it cannot be demolished, cannot be significantly altered without the approval of Historic Environment Scotland, and sets a hard geometric constraint on the entire stadium. The roof height, the footprint, the depth of the stand, all of these flow from a building designed in 1929 for a very different conception of what a football ground needed to do. Any future Ibrox must exist in conversation with Archibald Leitch's architecture. That is, in one sense, a gift. It gives a soul that no new build stadium will ever replicate. But it is also an engineering and planning constraint of the first order. An architect asked to expand the stadium would be working within limits that simply don't exist at a blank sheet site. Money matters too. Rangers went into administration in 2012. The club's position today is stronger than it has been in that entire period. But the capital base required to fund a major stadium project, a rebuilt Govan Stand alone, would likely cost upwards of £80 million to £100 million in the current market, sits at the higher end of what the club could realistically access without external investment, at a scale that has not yet materialized. What Ibrox becomes over the next 20 years is genuinely unknown. There are no confirmed plans, no planning applications, no contracts signed. What exists is a direction and a desire, held by a club that knows its stadium is already one of the finest in British football, and knows equally that it could be something more. The Bill Struth Main Stand has stood since 1929. Whatever comes next will have to earn the right to stand beside it. And that's the full story of Ibrox. A century of history, 2 disasters, 1 great rebuilding, and a future that is still being written. What do you think Rangers should do next? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching. See you next week.